Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Solomon Dacres left no doubt about the result in his rematch with Michael Webster on the Frank Warren Magnificent 7 card, stopping Webster in the 7th round of their fight, dropping him twice along the way. But it wasn't all perfect for Dacres, who wanted to make a statement, but certainly it was a much better result in terms of getting a stoppage, a rare stoppage for Dacres actually. He moves to 9-0 and this is his 3rd stoppage. Obviously, he may have fought better opposition than some other prospects, but Dacres overall, first few rounds, you kind of got the sense, like the first fight, that it was very evenly matched, that Dacres could have been doing more, probably should have been doing more, maybe sitting down on his shots a bit more, committing a bit more to the jab, but just a little bit passive. So you did have for a time Michael Webster building some confidence. Coming into the fight, rounds 3 and 4, I thought were Webster rounds. The first, obviously the first 4 rounds, pretty evenly split, and hard to sort of pick apart some of these rounds who was winning them, but it was a close contest. But it was round 5 where Dacres started to get the ascendancy, and it was a right hand that he seemed to hurt Webster, and he followed up with a couple of other shots, but the damage had already been done. Webster takes a knee. He leaves it pretty late in the count, actually. Got up at 9, and, sometimes we've seen British judges sort of wave it off in the past in those sort of circumstances, but he was allowed to continue. But he just seemed a little bit off the boil after that. Round 7, you had Dacres land a big right hand. He followed up with a left hook, another right hand, and Webster was down again. And this time he looked hurt a lot more. He does beat the count, but there is bad body language. So you had a case of the referee takes a look and goes, nope, no more. So Solomon Dacres drops and then stops Michael Webster. So he does get that get back after the first fight, because there was a lot of people saying that Dacres may not have won that first fight. It wasn't a convincing performance. And I guess maybe the convincing part, for elements of or moments in this fight, he wasn't super convincing either. So, he moves to 9-0. He retains his English title. And I guess I have to say, though, that this fight was made at somewhat relatively short notice. Michael Webster was a late notice opponent, just a few weeks. David Adeleye pulled up because he was injured in training. It was meant to be Adeleye and Dacres for the English title. So perhaps you had a situation with Webster being a bit underdone. But you do have a case that this was a pretty good, late notice opponent, given what happened to the first fight, about 6 months or so ago between Dacres and Webster, or maybe a little bit more. So Dacres, he kind of rights what people saw as a little bit of a wrong, but I don't know if people will be going away going, this guy's going all the way to the top based on that performance. Still just a little bit too passive, doesn't have massive pop, but he does have good skills and obviously can build, from here and try to sort of minimize some of his weaknesses. I think one of the things that he needs to do a little bit better, just my observation, the commentary called it out a couple of times, he doesn't really seem to commit to the jab all the time. There was a lot of sort of pouring, and sometimes that just allowed Michael Webster to sort of walk in the front door, get his jab away. The more authoritative jab in this fight was from Webster. He was the one, when he was using it, that he was pinging Dacres' head back at times. But, being a little bit critical here just to those things, a win is a win is a win. He moves to the next one, and hopefully it is that rematch or that fight with Adeleye, because I think these two are pretty well matched. Actually, I thought Dacres and Webster were, in those first few rounds, it was kind of like the first fight. Some of the rounds hard to split. It was very well matched, and I was thinking, are we going to see another performance, another fight from Dacres with Webster? We're just not quite sure who's winning all the rounds, and it could be a little bit contentious. But he grabbed the stoppage, and that sort of obviously puts a bit of an exclamation point on the performance to some extent. papers over the cracks a little bit, but I think that's, a good confidence builder to get the get back over Webster, with people doubting the first performance, and he can go into the Adelaide fight. And depending on, when that's going to be, and David Adelaide with his recovery, that is a very interesting and intriguing fight. But I think one of the things that Dacres is also going to have to work on is just not hanging that chin out there in the air, because that is one of the things that in this fight, in that first fight with Webster, often it is just there. And, that could be something that could be exploited against better fighters, because I do think that David Adelaide is a cut above where Webster is at. So obviously it was always going to be a tough fight, Solomon Dacres and David Adelaide. That's why it was such a tasty encounter. So hopefully, if Adelaide can get healthy, we see that next. If not, I think Dacres needs to continue, good, solid, developmental fights against guys, of that ilk of a Michael Webster. What about a Harry Armstrong? He gave a good performance against a Johnny Fisher. I don't think that would be a bad fight at all for Solomon Dacres at this point. I mean, there's a few guys floating around. I mean, what about a Nick Webb? There's a number, even a Cash Ali. There are some guys that I think Dacres can go in against, guys that have got decent height. They've got some good attributes, a couple of decent punches, what they're known for, but he can get something out of it. I don't think based on this, people are going away going, Dacres is getting too much above the level that he's at based on the development so far. But, he's still, I'm not going to say young because he's, closer to 30 at this point. But, there is a little bit more of a development aspect, I think, before he hits his ceiling. But I think sometimes just being a little bit too passive from elements of that fight, you were just thinking you can do a bit better. The skills and the ability to deliver some of the shots that he's got, he should be doing better. So I think we should expect a little bit more from Dacres, but I guess we'll see. We'll see what happens next with where he goes, who he's pitted against. If it's Adelaide, if it's someone else, one of the names I mentioned, or someone of that sort of ilk, that's fine. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment. Loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter. Boxing_squared. I'm out.